They say dogs are man's best friend. They lie. What you're about to witness isn't for the faint of heart. It's not about loyal companions curled at your feet or playful pups chasing tennis balls. This is about what happens when the line between predator and prey blurs, when ancient instincts twist into something calculating, something hungry that watches from just beyond the firelight. 3 tales, 3 separate accounts, 3 encounters with creatures that wear familiar shapes but harbor unfamiliar minds. In this compilation, you'll walk with a medical examiner who discovers that what stalks the town isn't just a wolf, but something born from corporate greed and scientific arrogance. You'll inherit a family legacy soaked in blood, where painted wolves don't just watch for murals, they wait for payment. And you'll ride with a lawman who learns that on the American frontier, some predators evolved to hunt the most dangerous game of all. The wilderness isn't empty. It's watching, learning, adapting. Evolution doesn't care about your comfort. It rewards what kills efficiently. So if you hear scratching at the window or footsteps in the hall, remember, what hunts you isn't just teeth and claws. It's patience, it's intelligence, it's purpose, and it's been practicing for a very long time. I never wanted Ravensholm, but when death comes calling and leaves you a crumbling estate, you don't get much fucking choice in the matter. My grandmother Vivian died last winter, alone in that monstrosity of stone and timber that had consumed 3 generations of my family. I barely knew her, just fragmented memories of a severe woman who drank bourbon neat and muttered about the burden when she thought no one was listening. I'd seen her maybe 4 times my entire life, at stilted family gatherings where she'd sit apart from everyone, watching me with those unnerving gray eyes. So when the call came, I figured I'd inherit some dusty jewelry, maybe her collection of first editions. Instead, I got a goddamn nightmare wrapped in property taxes. "The transfer is straightforward, Ms. Winters," said Harmon, sliding a leather folder across his polished desk. His fingers trembled slightly. I noticed, but didn't think much of it then. I should have. "Ravensholm is now legally yours, including all contents and obligations." He lingered on that final word, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Obligations?" I asked. "Just, maintenance considerations," he replied, refusing to hold my gaze. "The property has been in your family since 1887. "I'll probably just sell it," I said, already calculating the payoff in my head. The blood drained from his face. "I would strongly advise against immediate decisions. Perhaps visit the property first." That's how I found myself driving 6 hours into the mountains that March, following directions to a place that didn't register on any GPS. My girlfriend Zoe was beside me, scrolling uselessly through her phone as service bars disappeared one by one. "This place better have Wi-Fi," she said, not looking up. "I have deadlines next week." I didn't answer. The road had narrowed to barely more than a path, ancient oaks pressing in from both sides until they formed a canopy that turned the afternoon into twilight. When Ravensholm finally appeared around a sharp curve, I nearly drove us into a ditch. It wasn't just an estate. It was a sprawling stone monstrosity, 2 massive wings extending from a central structure, all harsh angles and weathered granite, with a copper roof gone green with age. Towering pines surrounded it like sentinels. "Holy shit," Zoe whispered, suddenly alert. "You inherited this whole place?" Harmon was waiting on the steps, looking like a man attending his own funeral. When I killed the engine, the silence hit me like a physical blow. No wind, no birds, nothing but a strange electric tension in the air. "Let me show you the essentials quickly," he said, his hands shaking as he worked an ornate iron key. "I need to be gone before sunset." That should have been my fucking wake-up call right there. The entrance hall was freezing despite the mild spring day outside. Dust motes swirled in shafts of dying light. The place smelled like petrichor and something metallic, like blood, but stagnant. Main house has 26 rooms, Harmon said, walking at a clip that wasn't casual. The kitchen was modernized about a decade ago. Your grandmother maintained only the critical systems. Why would she live all the way out here? Zoe asked, trailing her fingers along a banister that probably cost more than my apartment. She didn't, Harmon said shortly. Nobody lives at Ravensholm permanently. He paused, then added, they just maintain it. He pushed open a set of heavy oak doors to reveal a spacious study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture gone soft with age, a massive stone fireplace. Typical old money bullshit. But that wasn't what grabbed me, it was the mural. It covered the entire wall above the fireplace, life-sized, disturbing in its realism. A pack of timber wolves, 7 in total, with the alpha in the center. Its eyes were unnaturally amber and filled with what I can only describe as calculated malice. Their teeth were bared and their muscles tensed as if about to leap from the wall. Below the mural, the stone hearth was deeply scarred with what looked like claw marks. Your great-great-grandfather Heinrich painted it in 1887, Harmon said, keeping his distance from the wall. Your grandmother continued the family tradition. Which was what exactly? I asked, unable to break away from those glacial eyes. Harmon checked his watch obsessively. The sun's almost down. I need to leave now. He thrust the keys and a thick manila envelope into my hands. Everything you need to know is in here. Remember the only rule that matters. The land must be maintained. Before I could ask what the fuck that meant, he was gone, his car spraying gravel down the long drive. Well, he's creepy as shit, Zoe said, dropping onto a leather couch that exhaled dust. What's with the wolf painting? It's intense. Family heirloom, I guess. I couldn't stop staring at it. The alpha's eyes seemed to follow me as I moved around the room. That night, I tried to be logical. I heated some pasta in the surprisingly modern kitchen, opened a bottle of whiskey I'd brought, and sorted through my grandmother's papers in a bedroom as far from the study as possible. Her letter started normally enough. Welcome to my home, sorry about dying. Here's how the generator works. Then it went sideways. The property boundaries must be walked on the first day of each new month. Never sleep in the main house without completing this task. Never attempt to alter or remove the mural. The structure weakens during winter storms. Do not investigate sounds from the west wing. If you hear intruders at night, do not, under any circumstances, confront them. I laughed it off as the delusions of a lonely old alcoholic. Family mythology, right? Rich people always have bizarre traditions to rationalize holding on to decaying estates. Your grandmother sounds batshit, Zoe said when I showed her the letter. But this place is incredible. With some renovation, it could be worth millions. I passed out around 1 a.m., woke up at 3:17 to the sound of breaking glass. My first thought, burglars. Rural estate, isolated location, perfect target. But then I heard them. Boots moving deliberately on hardwood, moving through corridors, deep, huffing breaths. Something large, moving room by room, searching. Zoe was still asleep beside me, dead to the world. When my doorknob turned slowly, I stopped breathing. It jiggled once, twice, then stillness. A low, rumbling voice from just inches away, then receding footfalls. I didn't sleep again. At first light, I forced myself to check the house. In the study, scattered beneath the mural, were bloody deer remains, a hunter's trophy, lazily discarded on my floor. The mural seemed changed somehow. The alpha's head now turned slightly, its gaze locked directly on the doorway. I'm not insane. I know paintings don't change. But when I returned that afternoon, the wolves' postures had grown more aggressive. Their positions shifted closer to the mural's edge. It's just your imagination, Zoe said when I pointed it out. Old houses play tricks on your mind. It's probably worth a fortune, though. That night, the temperature dropped suddenly. Snow started falling, unusual for March, even in the mountains. It came down hard and fast, the kind of storm that buries everything in white silence. I stood at the window watching the world disappear, my grandmother's iron amulet suddenly cold against my throat. I'd found it among her things, an oval pendant with strange etchings. Something made me put it on, some instinct I couldn't name. "The power's going to go out," Zoe said, struggling with the ancient fireplace. "Shit." She pulled her hand back, blood beading along her palm where she'd cut it on a jagged piece of stone. The droplets fell to the hearth, sizzling where they touched the carved marks. That's when we heard it. A howl rang out through the storm's noise. Zoe and I locked eyes across the room. "Just a wolf," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. The howl came again, closer this time, followed by something that made my stomach turn. A sound that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human, like laughter stretched and distorted. The lights flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, I heard boots on the front porch, scratching, testing. "Don't open the door," I whispered, my grandmother's warning suddenly making horrific sense. "Whatever happens, don't open the fucking door." But it was too late. Something was already inside. I found Heinrich's journal hidden in a compartment beneath the library floor the next morning. His handwriting became increasingly unhinged as I read. My expeditions to the Siberian wilderness yielded knowledge forbidden to modern men. The locals spoke of wolf hunters, not mere poachers, but ancient bloodlines that protected their territories with merciless efficiency. I discovered their encampment and performed the ritual of binding during the lunar eclipse, establishing a blood contract with 7 of their most formidable men. Their leader, Fenris, was magnificent, but unbiddable. When I discovered he had conceived children with local women, I saw my opportunity. I threatened the safety of his illegitimate children in a ceremony designed to break his will, to harness the group's connections for my own ambitions. The bargain was struck in 1887. The mines had collapsed. Children were starving. He offered gold seams where there had been none. In return, he would take 1 female child from each generation when she came of age. No wonder my mother had disappeared when I was 14. Everyone said she'd abandoned us and couldn't handle being a parent. But now I knew. She'd been claimed. Just like my grandmother had been meant to be claimed. Just like I was now marked. The bargain wasn't just about maintaining the property. It was about sustaining a blood debt, paid in women from my family line. "We need to leave," I told Zoe when she finally woke up. "This place isn't right." "Are you kidding?" She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "We're snowed in, and this place is amazing. I've been exploring the West Wing." My blood went cold. "You went in the West Wing? When?" "While you were in the library. There's all these weird rooms with these cool artifacts. And I found this." She held up a small carved bone box. Inside were what looked like amber gemstones, 7 of them, unnervingly similar to the eyes of the wolves in the mural. "Put that back," I whispered. "We need to leave. Now." But she was already opening the front door, stepping out to check the depth of the snow. The storm had paused, leaving everything blanketed in pristine white. That's when I saw the tracks. Boot prints that approached our porch from the forest, then morphed halfway into what looked disturbingly like bare human footprints. I grabbed Zoe's arm and yanked her back inside, slamming the door behind us. "What the fuck?" she snapped, wrenching away from me. "Those tracks," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're not animal tracks. So someone else is out here. Probably locals checking on the property." I stared at her like she'd grown another head. "In the middle of a snowstorm, at night, with no car?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being paranoid." Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally seeing clearly for the first time. Either way, I wasn't taking chances. I dragged an antique sideboard in front of the door while Zoe watched, a mixture of concern and annoyance on her face. That night, I dreamed of wolves, not the snarling beasts from the mural, but men with amber eyes who moved with predatory grace through Ravensholm's halls. I woke drenched in sweat, the iron amulet burning against my skin. The mural had changed again. I was certain of it now. The wolves were no longer a pack. They had dispersed across the wall, disappearing into the painted forest. Only the alpha remained fully visible, its massive form now positioned at the very edge of the frame. One paw extended beyond the mural's boundary, onto the actual stone of the fireplace. "We're getting the fuck out of here today," I told Zoe over coffee. "Snow or no snow." She seemed distracted, glancing repeatedly toward the west wing. "I found something else last night," she said. "Old photographs. Your grandmother wasn't alone out here." "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone, showing me images she'd taken of yellowed photographs, men in hunting clothes, arranged around dead deer. My grandmother, decades younger, stood stiffly among them. "They're the same men in every photo," Zoe said, "never aging across decades. And look at this one." The last photo showed my grandmother with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard, and those same unnerving eyes I'd seen in the mural. His hand rested possessively on her shoulder. On the back was written the year 1972 and the phrase, "F keeps his promises. The mine yields again." I recognized my grandmother's slanting script. The date sent ice through my veins. 1972, the year my mother was born. "There's more," Zoe said, her voice strange. "I found business records. Your family was bankrupt in the 1880s, then suddenly flush with mining money. The same thing happened in the 1930s during the Depression, and again in the 70s when your grandfather died. Each time the family fortune mysteriously revived." "We need to go," I said, suddenly unable to breathe. "Now." But Zoe was enthralled. "Don't you get it? Your family made a deal with someone. These men, they helped the family in exchange for something." I thought about Heinrich's journal, about my mother's disappearance, about maintaining the property. "They're not helping us," I said. "They're farming us." I packed frantically while explaining what I'd found in Heinrich's journal, about the Siberian hunters, about the blood contract, about the women in my family. "That's insane," Zoe said, but she was finally packing too. "You can't seriously believe—" "I don't know what I believe," I shot back, "but I know we're not staying to find out." We were loading the car when I realized the amulet was missing from around my neck. Must have slipped off while I was packing. "Go start the car," I told Zoe. "I need to grab something." I ran back inside, searching frantically through the bedroom. The study door was ajar when I reached it. Inside, the fire was lit, though I didn't remember lighting it. The amulet lay on the hearth, directly beneath the mural. As I reached for it, I noticed the alpha wolf was gone from the painting entirely. A floorboard creaked behind me. "Zoe?" I called, my voice breaking. "She left," came a deep voice, rough like gravel. "Just drove away." I spun around. A man stood in the doorway, broad-shouldered, bearded, wearing hunting clothes that looked oddly old-fashioned. His eyes caught the firelight, reflecting amber. "You're not real," I whispered. He laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "I'm as real as this house, as real as the gold that's kept your family wealthy for generations." I backed away, bumping into the fireplace. "What do you want?" "Just what's owed," he said, stepping closer. "A daughter of the Winters line. Your grandmother tried to cheat us with that amulet, iron to ward us off. But the debt remains. My mother was taken, yes. But she wasn't the rightful heir. Your grandmother was supposed to come to us in her youth, but she found ways to delay, to send substitutes." His lips curled in what might have been a smile. "Your mother was an insufficient payment. The debt has grown." I glanced toward the door. Could I make it past him? He moved with impossible speed, blocking my path. "Your blood smells like hers," he said, inhaling deeply. "Like Vivian's." That's when I realized what this was. Not supernatural wolves or bargains with demons. Just men, brutal, territorial men, who'd found a way to manipulate my family for generations. The ritual Heinrich wrote about? Probably just intimidation tactics against superstitious locals. The blood contract? Extortion dressed up as mysticism. These were human predators who dominated the remote region for generations, controlling the mines, the forests, everything, including my family. "Let me guess," I said. stalling while my hand closed around a heavy brass paperweight. "You know where the good mining veins are. You control access to them. And my family pays you with, what? Money? Property?" His eyes narrowed. "Women," he said simply. "The women of your bloodline have the strength we need. Our family grows weak without new blood." Jesus Christ. They were inbreeders looking for fresh genetic stock, the mountain version of a cult. "And the mural?" I asked. "Just paint," he said with a shrug. "Your great-great-grandfather had a theatrical streak, said it would help remind the family of their obligation. The wolves are our family symbol." The changing positions? My stress-addled brain playing tricks on me. The deer carcass? Left by these psychos to intimidate me. I wasn't dealing with supernatural forces. I was dealing with something far more dangerous. Human predators who'd been controlling my family through fear and superstition for generations. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, gripping the paperweight tighter. "You misunderstand," he said. "We don't take anyone unwilling. That's not how this works." "Then how?" "You'll come to us eventually," he said with absolute certainty, "when you need what we offer." From the driveway came the sound of a car door slamming. Zoe? She'd come back? The man smiled. "That would be my brother's. With your friend?" I lunged then, swinging the paperweight at his head. He dodged with unnerving speed, but I'd surprised him. I bolted for the door, racing through the house toward the front entrance. Outside, Zoe stood between two men who looked eerily similar to the one I'd just left. Same build, same amber eyes. But she didn't look afraid. She looked entranced. "Zoe," I shouted, "get in the car." She turned to me, her expression blank. "They know about the deed, Ava. They can help us claim the mineral rights. Millions of dollars worth. They're fucking manipulating you. We need to go." One of the men stepped forward, smiling coldly. "Your grandmother tried to break the cycle. Thought she could die and leave Ravensholm to someone ignorant of its history. But the land knows who it belongs to." I grabbed Zoe's arm. "They're con men. They've been scamming my family for generations." Zoe hesitated, looking between me and the men. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Doubt, maybe. "Tell her about the gold," one of the men said to Zoe. "What we showed you." "There's a new vein," Zoe said, her voice distant. "They've found it on the northwest edge of the property, worth millions." I'd seen enough manipulation in my life to recognize it. These men had found Zoe's weak spot, her ambition, her desire for financial security, just as they'd found my family's weakness generations ago. "I'm leaving," I said firmly, "with or without you." I turned toward the car, praying she would follow. Behind me, one of the men said something in a language I didn't recognize. A third man emerged from the trees, holding a rifle casually at his side. I froze. Part of me wanted to run, but I knew I wouldn't make it to the car. That's when I noticed Harmon's car parked half hidden among the trees. He hadn't left after all. The coward had been watching the entire time. I needed a diversion, something to create chaos just for a few seconds. "You know what?" I said, turning back. "Let's talk business. If there's gold on this property, I want my share." The men exchanged glances. This was not the response they expected. "First," I continued, forcing confidence into my voice, "I want to see this gold vein for myself." The leader, Fenris, if I remembered Heinrich's journal correctly, smiled thinly. "Of course, first thing tomorrow. Tonight, we'll discuss terms." I didn't bother correcting his assumption that I was stupid enough to stay another night. Instead, I walked toward them, letting my hand slip into my pocket where I kept my car keys. My thumb found the panic button. The car alarm shrieked through the silence, startling everyone. I grabbed Zoe's wrist and ran, yanking her toward Harmon's car instead of my own. The men would expect us to go for my car, the one making all the noise. Harmon was indeed inside, half asleep in the driver's seat. His eyes flew open in terror when I wrenched the door open. "Drive!" I screamed, shoving Zoe into the back seat and diving in after her. To his credit, Harmon didn't hesitate. The car fishtailed in the snow as he slammed it into gear, then shot down the drive. In the rearview mirror, I could see the men running after us, their movements unnervingly swift and coordinated. "They'll follow us," Harmon said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They always do." "Not for long," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'm calling the police." Harmon laughed bitterly. "The local sheriff is one of them, has been for generations." "Of course. How else could they operate so openly for so long?" "Then we don't stop until we hit the next county," I said. "The next state, if necessary." Zoe was coming out of whatever daze they'd put her in. "I don't understand," she murmured. "They showed me gold. Actual gold veins in the rock." "I'm sure they did," I replied grimly. "That's how they hook you. They probably control every mine in the region. They dangle wealth, then extract their price." Later, after we were a good distance away, I confronted Harmon as he drove us down the mountain, his hand still shaking on the wheel. "You never fucking left, did you?" I demanded, rage building in my chest. "You sat there and watched those men come for us." Harmon's eyes flicked to mine in the rearview mirror. "I couldn't leave," he said, his voice barely audible. "They would have known." "Known what?" He swallowed hard. "My grandfather was their lawyer before me, and his father before that. We've handled the Ravensholm affairs for 3 generations. His laugh was hollow. "You think you're the only one trapped in a family legacy? So what? You just sit in your car and watch when they come to collect?" His hands tightened on the wheel. "I'm supposed to report back. Who comes to the property, who leaves. That's my job." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Your grandmother made me promise to help you if you tried to leave. She knew they'd come for you eventually." "Then why not just tell me everything from the start?" I asked, my mind too clouded to process any of it. "Would you have believed me?" Harmon shot back. "Would anyone? That a group of mountain men have been extorting women from a single family for generations? That they control the mines, the police, everything in this county?" He shook his head. "I've tried before. With others. They either think I'm crazy, or they get greedy when they hear about the gold." It made a sick kind of sense. Harmon was their inside man, but with just enough conscience to try warning me in his weak, pathetic way. "They killed the last lawyer who tried to break free," he added, almost whispering. "Found him in pieces. Wolf attack, officially." I thought about the deer carcass in the study, the warning. "So you're a fucking coward," I said. He didn't deny it. "I'm alive, and now so are you." As we sped down the mountain, I thought about my grandmother, alone in that house for decades. Had she been their prisoner? Their accomplice? Both? One thing was certain, Ravensholm would never be mine. I'd sell it for whatever I could get, to whoever was stupid enough to buy it. Let the cycle end with me. 2 days later, in a motel 300 miles away, I finally opened the envelope Harmon had given me, the one I'd grabbed as we fled. Inside was a deed transferring ownership of Ravensholm, not to me, but to the Fenris Trust, effective upon my grandmother's death. She had tried to break free in her way, to spare me the fate that had claimed her, and my mother before her. I burned the deed in the motel bathroom sink, let them try to claim legal ownership. I'd fight them with modern weapons, lawyers, courts, the FBI if necessary. I never returned to Ravensholm, but sometimes when I dream, I still hear boots in the hallway and still see amber eyes watching from the edge of the forest. Nothing supernatural, just men, which, in my experience, is far more terrifying. I never told anyone the full story of what happened that winter in Blackridge. Most folks who were there are either dead or wish they were. The railroad company buried the official report so deep, you'd need to dig halfway to China to find it. But I'm an old man now, and secrets don't keep a body warm at night. It was 1879, and I was riding with U.S. Marshal Elijah Holt, tracking a gang that had robbed 3 banks across Colorado territory. The Kilgore brothers, mean bastards who'd kill a man for his boots and feed what was left to the coyotes. Winter came early that year, cruel and sharp as a knife. We'd been on their trail for 2 weeks when the blizzard hit, forcing us into the mining town of Blackridge, a forgotten stain on the map about 30 miles north of nowhere. "We'll wait it out," Holt said as we stabled our horses. "Town like this, somebody's bound to talk." Holt was a hard son of a bitch, 6'4", with hands like sledgehammers and a face carved from granite. 20 years as a lawman had burned every drop of mercy out of him. He'd watched his wife and daughter murdered by raiders in '65, and whatever was left of the man after that was just cold purpose and whiskey. Blackridge had once been a boom town when silver was discovered in '71, but the vein ran dry within 3 years. Now it was just a collection of weathered buildings clinging to the mountainside, half buried in snow and regret. The kind of place where people ended up, not where they intended to go. We took a room at the White Pine Hotel and headed to the saloon. The Broken Antler was the only place still showing signs of life, yellow lamplight spilling onto the snow outside. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the sour stench of unwashed bodies. A dozen or so men hunched over their drinks, each wrapped in their own private misery. I ordered whiskey for Holt and myself from a barkeep with one cloudy eye. He poured with a trembling hand, spilling as much as he served. "Traveling in this weather?" he asked, his good eye darting between us. "Must be important business." "Just passing through," Holt said, sliding a coin across the scarred wood. "Waiting on the storm to break." "Might be waiting a while," said a voice behind us. "Mountains don't give up their prisoners easily this time of year." I turned to see an old man, skin like tanned leather stretched over bone. His hair was long and white, and he wore a mixture of work clothes and what looked like handmade garments. His eyes were black as pitch and seemed to see right through me. "Name's Joseph Rivers," he said, though nobody had asked. "Used to guide for the army before age caught up with me. Now I just drink whiskey and wait to die." He laughed, showing tobacco-stained teeth. Holt ignored him, but I nodded politely. I've always figured it costs nothing to be civil. "You boys chasing the Kilgores?" Rivers asked, and I felt Holt stiffen beside me. "What makes you say that?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. The old man shrugged. "Word travels, even in dying towns like this one. They passed through here 3 days ago, took a room upstairs, paid with blood money." Holt turned to him now, interest kindled. "They still here?" Rivers shook his head. "Left yesterday morning, headed up to the old McNally mine. Funny thing, though." He leaned in closer, his breath sour with cheap whiskey. "They weren't alone when they rode out." I noticed the saloon had gone quiet, conversations dying like flames without oxygen. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Something followed them from the hills," Rivers said. "A pack of wild dogs, biggest I've ever seen. Been attacking livestock in these parts for months now." A man at a nearby table spat on the floor. "Christ's sake, Joseph, don't start with your tall tales." Rivers didn't look at him. 3 nights ago I saw them, eyes reflecting in the moonlight. Ain't been wolves in these parts for 15 years, since the settlers shot them all. But these were something else. Feral dogs gone wild, breeding with wolves come down from Canada maybe. "Dogs follow food," Holt said dismissively. "Heavy snow probably drove game down from the high country." "These ain't regular dogs," Rivers insisted. "These are something else. They're smart, too smart. They hunt together like they're planning it out." The barkeep suddenly slammed a bottle down. "That's enough. I won't have that talk in here." His voice was shaking. "Already got folks scared enough after what happened to Jenkins's cattle." As if on cue, a howl rose from somewhere in the darkness outside, long and mournful. The sound froze the blood in my veins. Another howl answered the first, closer this time. "They're getting bolder," Rivers whispered. "Coming down from the hills." Holt drained his whiskey and stood up. "I need facts, not ghost stories. Does anyone here know exactly where the McNally mine is?" A man in the corner raised his hand hesitantly. He wore the stained clothes of a mine worker, his face perpetually darkened by coal dust that no amount of scrubbing would remove. "I worked there before it closed," he said. "It's about 5 miles north up in the hills, but you don't want to go there, mister. Not now." "And why's that?" Holt asked, impatience edging his voice. "Because 4 men went up to check on some stray cattle yesterday," the miner said. "Only one came back, and he was—" The man swallowed hard. Doc had to strap him down. Keeps raving about eyes watching him from the dark. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter cold. Holt just grunted and tossed a few more coins on the bar. "We'll head out at first light," he said to me. "Get some sleep." Back in our room, I tried to settle in for the night, but something had gotten under my skin. I kept thinking about those howls, how they didn't sound quite right. Sleep came in fits and starts, haunted by dreams of men being torn apart by shadows with gleaming teeth. I woke to Holt shaking me roughly. Gray dawn light filtered through the frosted window. "Get up," he said. "There's been trouble." I pulled on my boots and followed him downstairs. A crowd had gathered outside the sheriff's office across the street. The snow was stained crimson, and something dark was being covered with a blanket. The town's lone lawman, a portly fellow named Buchanan who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, was attempting to calm the gathering. "What happened?" I asked a woman standing nearby, wrapped in a shawl against the cold. "Miller's boy," she said, her voice hollow with shock. "Found him like that just now. Barely anything left to bury." I caught a glimpse as the doctor lifted the blanket to examine the remains. What I saw turned my stomach. The boy couldn't have been more than 16, and he'd been torn apart. The savagery of the attack was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Holt pushed his way through to the sheriff, flashing his marshal's badge. They spoke in low voices, and I saw the sheriff point north toward the hills. "Tracks lead up toward the mine," Holt said when he returned. "Could be the Kilgores, trying to scare the town. Or could be those wild dogs Rivers mentioned," I suggested. Holt gave me a hard look. "You're not buying that nonsense, are you?" I wasn't sure what I believed anymore. "I'm just saying that didn't look like any human killer's work to me." "Men can be worse than animals when they want to be," Holt said grimly. "Saddle up, we're heading out now." We rode north as the sun climbed in a colorless sky. The storm had passed, leaving a world transformed into white silence. Our horses struggled through snow that sometimes reached their chests, their breath pluming in the bitter air. The McNally mine entrance was set into the mountainside, the wooden supports warped and rotting from years of neglect. A few dilapidated shacks clustered nearby, once the homes of miners, now just empty shells. No smoke rose from any chimney, no sign of the Kilgores or anyone else. But there were tracks in the snow, lots of them. "Those aren't human," I said, studying the large paw prints that circled the area. They were dog or wolf tracks, but massive, bigger than any I'd ever seen. Holt dismounted and drew his Winchester rifle. "Stay alert. Could be the Kilgores trained some dogs." "Dogs don't get that big," I muttered, but I followed his lead, pulling my Colt from its holster. The mine entrance sprawled before us, and the wind moaned through the timbers, carrying the scent of rust and decay. And something else. Something coppery and wet. "Hello," Holt called out. His voice echoed back, mocking. No response. "We should wait for backup," I suggested. "Sheriff Buchanan could—" "Buchanan's a drunk who hasn't drawn his gun in 10 years, Holt cut me off. "Besides, we're federal marshals. We don't need local permission to do our job." I wanted to remind him that I was just a deputy, barely 6 months on the job, but I kept my mouth shut. Arguing with Elijah Holt was like trying to reason with a rock slide. We lit lanterns and entered the mine. The darkness swallowed us quickly, the temperature dropping with each step. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, a steady metronome counting down to something I didn't want to face. The main shaft descended gradually, support beams groaning under the weight of the mountain above. Our lantern light threw shadows against the rock walls. Every few yards, smaller tunnels branched off. The tracks continued inside, paw prints in the mud. And now, boot prints too. Men had come this way recently. After about 100 yards, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber where the miners had once sorted ore. Rusted tools and broken carts lay scattered about. And blood. So much blood it puddled on the ground and splashed across the walls. In the center of the chamber lay what remained of the Kilgore brothers. There had been 3 of them, Jeb, the eldest, and his younger brothers, Curtis and Floyd. Now they were barely recognizable as humans. They'd been ripped apart, limbs scattered, torsos laid open to expose shattered ribs. Their faces were the worst, frozen in expressions of such perfect terror that I knew they'd seen what was killing them and understood exactly what was happening. Holt cursed and raised his rifle, scanning the shadows. What in God's name did this? A low growl answered him, emanating from one of the side tunnels. Then, another joined it from a different direction. And another. They emerged slowly, 3 massive shapes padding into the lantern light. Dogs, but like none I'd ever seen. They stood nearly waist-high, with shoulders broader than a man's. Their fur was matted with blood and filth, and their eyes reflected our lantern light with an unnatural gleam. I'd seen rabid dogs before, but this was different. These creatures moved with purpose, with calculation. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "Shoot!" Holt roared, firing his Winchester. The bullet struck the largest dog in the shoulder, tearing a chunk of flesh away. The beast jerked but didn't fall. The wound seemed to enrage it rather than slow it down. Then they attacked. Everything became confusion and terror. Gunshots echoed deafeningly in the confined space. I fired until my Colt clicked empty, then fumbled to reload as one of the beasts lunged at me. I fell backward, the creature's weight crushing me as its jaws snapped inches from my face. Its breath was rot and slaughterhouse stench, its eyes burning with something beyond animal hunger. Holt's Winchester boomed again, and the creature jerked as another bullet tore into it. It turned its attention to Holt, giving me just enough space to jam my knife into its throat. The blade sank into the hilt and hot blood poured out, splashing my hand. The creature let out a horrible sound. Not quite a howl, not quite a yelp. It stumbled back, clawing at the knife. "Run!" Holt yelled, firing again and again as the other 2 beasts circled him. "Get back to town. Bring help." I hesitated only a moment, then turned and fled, my lantern swinging wildly as I ran back up the tunnel. Behind me I heard Holt's rifle fire 3 more times, then a terrible scream that I knew wasn't coming from an animal. I ran until my lungs burned, expecting at any moment to feel teeth in my back. When I reached daylight, I kept running, scrambling to where we'd left the horses. Holt's mount was gone, spooked by the gunfire. Mine reared and nearly threw me as I approached, nostrils flaring at the scent of blood still wet on my hand. Somehow I got into the saddle and kicked the panicked animal into motion. We careened down the mountain, taking falls that should have killed us both. All I could think about was putting distance between myself and those things. I don't remember much about the ride back to Blackridge. Fever took hold as the gash on my hand festered, the flesh turning angry around the edges. By the time I reached town, I was delirious, barely able to stay in the saddle. They tell me I was raving about monsters and men being hunted down. The town doctor, a German immigrant named Weiss who'd lost his medical license back east, treated my hand as best he could, but ended up taking 2 fingers that had turned gangrenous. No one wanted to believe my story. They formed a search party the next day and found what was left of Holt and the Kilgores. The official report blamed it on a pack of rabid wolves driven to extremes by the harsh winter. The bodies were buried quickly, the mine entrance collapsed with dynamite, and the whole affair hushed up to avoid frightening off potential investors as the town struggled to reinvent itself. Rivers vanished that same night. Some said he headed south. Others said that he'd been taken by the same creatures that killed the others. I never saw him again. I left law enforcement after that, drifted south to New Mexico territory, and took up ranching on a small scale. I married a local widow and raised her kids as my own, built something like a normal life. But every winter I lock the doors and windows tight. I keep a loaded shotgun by my bed. And when I hear dogs howling in the distance, I break into a cold sweat. They never found all the dogs, you see. The search party killed 2, but there were more. There were always more. Bred in the wild, twisted by starvation and isolation into something that wasn't quite animal anymore. I'm an old man now. The frontier is gone, tamed by railroads and telegraph wires. But some nights, when the wind howls around my ranch house, I remember that darkness in the mine. The blood on the walls. The way those animals moved. coordinated, calculating, almost human in their malice. And I wonder if what hunted us that day was something more than just wild dogs, something born from the violence that soaked the frontier in blood year after year, something that learned from watching men kill men until it got a taste for the sport itself. What scares me most isn't the memory of teeth and blood and death. It's the intelligence I saw in those eyes as they watched us, patient, calculating, aware. I've killed men wearing a badge. I've seen the worst humanity has to offer. But what I saw in that mind was something else. Nature twisted into a mirror of our own savagery, reflecting it back at us. And it's still out there. My hand shook as I photographed the body, the fourth we'd found in as many weeks. December wind cut through my gloves, but that wasn't why I couldn't keep the camera steady. 20 years as county medical examiner, and I'd never seen anything like this. Dr. Lindholm's corpse lay half buried in snow, throat torn open with those same strange marks I'd seen on the others. The difference this time was the black veins spreading beneath his skin like river deltas from the wounds. Something was very wrong. "Hey, Doc," Deputy Garcia called from the clearing's edge. "We've got a problem. Something is blocking the main road, and phone service is dead." He shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Those tracks we found by the tree line, they start human, then..." "Just show me," I cut him off, already dreading what I'd see. We'd first spotted wolves 6 months ago. Not just ordinary sightings, something methodical about them. Security footage from the ranger station showed them moving with unnatural coordination, almost herding lost hikers. They watched the security cameras, their eyes reflecting with an alertness that disturbed me. Back at my lab, I examined tissue samples from Lindholm's neck. Hours after death, the cells were still active, not decomposing normally. My computer pinged with an email from Eliza Roberts, a retired wildlife biologist I occasionally consulted. Found records on Prometheus Biotech, illegal dumping in '97, Blackwater Ridge, check victim's medical history, library, now. I grabbed my coat. Something told me we were running out of time. The library windows glowed against the night sky. Eliza had commandeered a back table, spreading newspaper clippings and photos across its surface. "Look at this," she whispered, pointing to yellowed headlines about mass wildlife deaths. All during similar seasons, all clustered around this region. Then suddenly, 7 researchers and their CEO vanish. Her fingers trembled, opening another folder. Every victim received experimental immunotherapy treatments last year. Same research hospital. Some revolutionary cellular regeneration project? Let me guess, Prometheus subsidiary. Exactly. She tapped a faded photograph showing industrial barrels in a pit. Behind them stood men and women in lab coats, their expressions oddly blank. I recognized the location, the Blackwater Ridge cave system about 15 miles north of town. Thunder rolled across the valley as we drove up the mountain road in my ancient Jeep. My head throbbed, a metallic taste filling my mouth. "So their chemical waste contaminated the groundwater," I said, clutching the tranquilizer rifle I'd borrowed from animal control. "Affected the local wildlife, but the immunotherapy somehow triggered something in humans." I stopped talking when I noticed headlights behind us. They'd appeared from nowhere on this isolated stretch. When I slowed, they slowed. When I accelerated, they matched my speed. "Someone's following us," Eliza said, her voice tight. "Could be nothing, Ranger Patrol maybe." We both knew better. The headlights disappeared as we rounded a bend, then reappeared directly in front of us. They'd somehow cut across the terrain. I swerved, nearly sending us over the edge. The vehicle was a black SUV with tinted windows and no license plate. It forced us onto a narrow logging road leading deeper into the forest. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, attempting to turn around. The headlights vanished. In their place, something moved at the edge of my high beams. Large shapes, low to the ground, strategically positioned to block our retreat. I caught glimpses of massive gray forms, too big to be normal wolves moving with military precision. "They're hurting us," Eliza whispered. The logging road led straight to the cave entrance. We had nowhere else to go. Inside, my flashlight revealed hundreds of animal and human bones scattered across the ground. Steel drums leaked fluorescent blue fluid. On the walls, strange markings formed what looked like chemical formulas. The place reeked of industrial chemicals and something else, a musky animal smell that triggered a primal fear response. "The chemical drums," I whispered, noticing how the animal tracks carefully avoided certain areas. Direct contact seems to hurt them. We ventured deeper. The cave opened into what had clearly once been a laboratory. Equipment lay broken and rusted, but some computers still had battery power. Eliza found research journals detailing Prometheus's true goal: genetic modification, using wolf DNA to enhance human physical capabilities. Military applications, enhanced soldiers. "They were trying to create super soldiers," she muttered, flipping through pages. "Enhanced senses, strength, pack mentality for improved unit cohesion." "Something went wrong," I said, examining a wall covered in desperate scrawled notes. "The chemicals didn't just affect the test subjects, they contaminated the entire ecosystem. We found footage from the facility's security cameras. The final recordings showed researchers transforming, not into literal wolves, but something wrong. Their movements became predatory. Their social structure collapsed into something more feral. They'd lost control of their experiment and become its victims." A noise from the tunnel behind us, then multiple footsteps. Men in tactical gear emerged from the darkness, weapons raised. Not military, private security, Prometheus damage control. 27 years too late. Dr. Rivers once said, addressing me by name, "We've been monitoring your investigation. This is a containment breach. You've been exposed to a classified biological agent." "We know what you did," Eliza said. "The immunotherapy trials were never about cancer treatment. You were continuing the project, weren't you? Using civilians as test subjects." The security team said nothing and just motioned us deeper into the cave system. They led us to a modern section, a hidden research outpost still in operation. White-coated scientists looked up from their work as we entered. One stepped forward, her face hauntingly familiar from the old photographs. "Dr. Harriet Voss," Eliza breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." Voss's smile was thin. "Reports of my demise were necessary. The project required privacy." She looked me up and down. "You've been experiencing symptoms, haven't you, Dr. Rivers? Heightened senses, changes in appetite, disturbing dreams?" My stomach dropped. She was right. For weeks I'd dismissed the signs: exceptional night vision, strange food cravings, waking up exhausted like I'd been running all night. "The immunotherapy treatment you received last year wasn't for your arthritis," she continued. "You were selected based on genetic markers, compatibility with our program." "You experimented on me without consent," I said, rage building. "On all those people who died." "Some subjects reject the changes," she said clinically. "Their bodies fight the transformation until organs fail. Others—" She nodded toward a security monitor showing the forest outside. Large shapes moved between trees, some on 4 legs, some walking awkwardly on 2. Others adapt too well, losing higher cognitive function. "The perfect outcome is balance," another scientist added. "Enhanced physical capabilities without loss of human intellect." "And the local wolves?" Eliza asked. "Cross-contamination from the original chemical spill. They're evolving too, becoming more intelligent with each generation. They're drawn to our subjects. They sense the shared changes. That's why they've been watching the town, why they found the bodies before your department did." Voss checked her watch. "The newest formulation should minimize the negative effects. Your symptoms will increase for several days and then stabilize. The treatment makes you stronger, faster, more resistant to disease." She smiled coldly. "Consider it an upgrade." "And if I don't want your upgrade?" I demanded. "It's already happening," she replied. "Fighting it only causes mental deterioration. The subjects who accept the changes retain their humanity. The ones who resist—" She gestured to security footage of holding cells where people thrashed and screamed, their movements increasingly less human, An alarm suddenly blared. Security personnel rushed to their stations. "Perimeter breach," someone shouted. "They're inside the compound." On the monitors, large shapes moved with purpose through the facility. The wolves had found a way in, but they weren't attacking randomly. They moved with tactical precision, disabling security systems and freeing test subjects. "They're working together," Eliza whispered. "The wolves and the transformed subjects. They're organized." Chaos erupted. Gunfire. Screams. In the confusion, Eliza pulled me toward an emergency exit. "We need to get out of here," she urged. "Destroy as much research as we can on the way." We ran through corridors, hitting emergency purge buttons, erasing data, and releasing test subjects. Behind us, the facility descended into madness. We reached my jeep as explosions rocked the cave entrance. The whole mountainside seemed to be collapsing. "They're burying the evidence," I said, gunning the engine. Classic corporate containment. As we sped down the mountain, I caught glimpses of shapes running parallel to us through the trees, both animal and not quite human, keeping pace easily. Not pursuing. Escorting. I felt a strange sense of connection to them, a pull, understanding without words. That was 3 weeks ago. The official story is that Prometheus Biotech was conducting illegal wildlife research that resulted in a chemical spill. The bodies were attributed to animal attacks. The facility collapsed due to structural failure. The corporation is facing fines and lawsuits, but nothing that will bankrupt them. No mention of genetic modification, no mention of the treatments disguised as routine medical procedures, no mention of what's happening to me. Eliza's been helping me document the changes. My strength has doubled. I can hear conversations 3 rooms away. My night vision is, well, I don't need headlights to drive anymore. The hunger is the hardest part, not just increased appetite, but specific cravings I don't want to dwell on. I've been running blood tests on myself. Whatever they put in me is spreading cell by cell, changing me. There are moments I don't recognize my own reflection, not physically, but there is something in my eyes, something older, something predatory. The wolves have been watching my house at night, not threatening, just waiting. Last week I found a dead rabbit on my porch, not mangled, but killed cleanly and left like a gift or an invitation. I haven't told anyone at work. What would I say? "Hey, by the way, I was unwittingly part of a corporate super soldier program, and now I'm turning into something not entirely human." Last night I dreamed of running through the forest, not being chased, chasing. The feeling of power was intoxicating. I woke up in my backyard, dirt under my fingernails, and no memory of how I got there. Eliza thinks I should go public and expose Prometheus, but who would believe us? And more importantly, part of me doesn't want it to stop. That's the terrifying truth I can barely admit to myself. With each passing day, I feel stronger, more alive, more something else. Yesterday, I found a file on my doorstep, research notes from inside Prometheus, names of others who received the treatment, a map marked with locations of chemical dump sites, and a handwritten note. "The pack is waiting." I don't know who left it. One of the escaped test subjects, maybe. Or perhaps one of Prometheus's scientists with an attack of conscience. Tonight's a full moon. Eliza's coming over to monitor my vitals and document whatever happens next. The changes have been accelerating with the lunar cycle, increased aggression and physical shifts that are harder to hide. We're recording everything, building our case, but there's something I haven't told her, something I've barely admitted to myself. Part of me is looking forward to tonight, to finally stopping this exhausting fight against whatever I'm becoming, to surrendering to this new reality. I keep telling myself I'm still me, still human, but when I looked in the mirror this morning, something else looked back, something hungry, something waiting to emerge, and God help me, I want to meet it.